back to HR Shake, a podcast where we bring people, work, and passion into the mix. I'm your host, Camelia, and today we will touch upon some very interesting myths about leadership. We've all heard them. Do we know what is the difference between leadership and management? Or how are we expecting an ideal leader to be? We have no idea, but we will find out just now. And we will be debunking these myths together today with Davy De Regge. Thank you, Davy, for coming today.
Thank you, with pleasure.
He is the managing partner of iconnect, but I'll let you then introduce yourself. Tell us more about your activity.
Yes, as I said, or as you mentioned, I'm managing partner of iconnect. What we do is we do digital transformations in a company. That can be very, very broad, meaning it can go for a technology implementation to really redesign and rethinking processes in a company, thinking about how to implement AI, how to bring that into the organization, taking care of the change management. So it's quite a variety of things that we cover in this transformation process.
Very interesting, very interesting. And I know that you're also handling workshops. I mean, you are hosting leadership workshops.
Yes, of course. This is important for us and for me to let's say, advocate the things that we stand for. To bring to, let's say, to a broader audience, what is digital transformation? How can you make this kind of transformations a success? And that success mostly starts with leadership. True. Leadership needs to support a vision, needs to be behind a certain vision, needs to know his company, needs to be aware of the corporate culture to enroll such a transformation. Because if it's about the technology transformation, technology is just a part of the solution of the result, as a matter of speaking. It's the adoption, the human part, which is significantly more important, because that makes when an implementation or a transformation is successfully or not.
That's true, and that's a very good point, because indeed everything starts from leadership. And just for us to have a little bit of an understanding, because there is a lot of confusion between leadership and management. What is the difference between the two?
Well, that's the difference between the two is actually management is making sure that you have a consequent number of tasks being executed and being on top of it. Because still at some of my clients I fulfill the role of project manager, which is making sure that everything is being done. You have a checklist of activities. There's also the part where you need to understand what is required to have a successful execution of a task. Leadership, and then I'm looking in my other roles as a program director or as managing partner, is that you need to set the tone for a certain direction. It's about creating a safe environment that everybody can contribute to, let's say, a broader picture. It's not about, for me, leadership and such as then not being the smartest in the room, but making that the room where everybody else is running around are smarter than yourself.
That's a very nice way to say. Indeed, I like that. Indeed, and I think that's how it should be. But indeed, it's very important to know. So thank you for clarifying that, because I know in general when we work in the corporate life, we often make that mistake between leadership and management. And then, of course, now the myths come, and that's really interesting that I would like to debunk with you. So basically, the first one that I hear about is that often leaders must have all the answers. True or false?
That's absolutely both. It's true and it's false.
Okay.
Meaning that if we take a few step backs in, let's say, history, I think it used to be normally a company starts with a founder. And the founder is putting something in the market, a product or a service, and he should know his market inside and out, his product, his service inside and out. he is setting up the company, making sure that everything functions as it should be, but that stops at a certain point. Your company gets bigger, or the market, as we see today, gets more complex, and that makes that, you cannot have all the answers. If you think you have, it's not about thinking if you have all the answers or not. If everybody needs to rely on the leader, that creates a culture of certainty and not performance, because everybody will look at the leader for the answer and will stop bringing in things of their own, as let's say. Because at that point, the leader is blocking the common intelligence of that company, and that's the thing you want to avoid. You want to open it up, especially today with complexity of, for instance, the difficult geopolitical situation, emerging technology like AI. The market in general is let's say, more complex. Things are moving way faster than before, so you cannot have the answers. Basically, in typically innovation cultures, also design culture, you see that leadership supports giving the floor to others to just bring that answer. They launch a concept, and then it's to the rest of the company to say, okay, but we can complement this. And basically, if you say a leader must have all the answers, I think it's far more important that the leader asks the right questions.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And where do you think this misconception comes from? That normally it should have, everybody, I mean, the leader needs to have all the answers.
Difficult to say. I think it's basically traditional culture, maybe originating from family-owned companies, whatever. But as we've seen already in, let's say, the last few decades, this cannot. This is a reality that makes that your company is not competitive anymore.
True, it is true. I mean, well, we should. I'm not saying tradition is not good, but at a certain point, we should maybe embrace tradition with also innovation to kind of make them, work together. Because otherwise,
accountability.
And accountability, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Interesting. And for you, for example, when did you feel that this, let's say, conception will not work anymore, having all of the answers all the time, because you have your experience with the company that you are now in, and that it grew with time? Was there a moment when you felt that it was no longer the...
It's not exactly that. That is something that you bring in from day one. It's more something that I grasped from, let's say, almost a 25-year-long career.
Oh la la. Okay.
Seeing at different clients, being aware that leaders just don't have indeed all the answers, and they need to rely on different people to make the company move forward.
Okay, and what do they lose if they don't do that?
They will lose progress.
Okay.
Yeah? Because if you stay within boundaries, if as I said before, if you are being the bottleneck for the common intelligence, then your company stops evolving.
Understood. Well, that hopefully will not be the case. So that's definitely an idea of not to do, no go, don't do that. And speaking of having a little bit of control over the situation when you don't let your people contribute, I understand that in other, let's say, misconceptions, you hear about leadership that is equal to control. What do you think about that?
Well, that's very, you can tie that very much to the first one, because if we think about leadership and control, which ties very much to the first myth, is leaders have all the answers. If you leadership is about control. If your leadership is all about control, then you create on the surface a certain calm. But underneath you create dangerous depths. meaning that a good leader should make sure that the company can move around or move forward without him.
Okay.
That's the sole purpose. eh? Being in control means that you control everything, but that also that you you're obliged to avoid or put away all the possible risks. Risks or can lead, or errors can lead to new insights, innovation, etc. If you try to stay in control all the time, then you narrow that. So again, it's opposing evolution.
Understood. Makes sense. So I think that would be maybe the same as in if you do micromanagement, although they're two different things at the same time.
Well, it's not so micromanagement in a way, but it's really, for me, and it's also, which is a DNA of a consulting company. Yeah, you bring in knowledge, you help the client to move forward for a certain project or process or whatever, but it doesn't mean that the client or the customer is constantly relying on you. Your purpose is that you bring in something and you go away. So the customer cannot be depending on you. Same goes for leadership, because anything can happen, but the ultimate goal is that the company should move forward without the leader.
Makes sense. So you leave basically the people to grow and the company to grow while you are, let's say, guiding them through the
Exactly.
behind
The
the
captain
scene.
on the ship is also not doing everything. So he looks and he shows the direction and everything, and all the people on the command board are pulling and pushing the buttons and pulling the levers. But in the end, he knows where the destination is, and his ultimate goal is make that ship moving towards that destination.
I love that metaphor with the captain of the ship. Oh, that's really interesting. And with time, I mean, why do you think there are people who believe that if you do control everything, that means it's good leadership?
I will say something else. Again, having good leadership is not about control.
True.
You need control always. It's not that you cannot have a company without any control. To give an example, the example I want to give is the end on court.
Okay.
So I think you already knew
From
that
your workshop,
one.
yes.
Yes. Is that in a factory you have different, let's say, production lines, and at each production line there's a number of people, and there's a cord along the production line, each production line actually, and the moment if something goes wrong, someone needs to pull that cord, but that means that the whole production line stops. The consequence is that they can interact on what went wrong, but also they can trace back why and how and where initiated the error, for instance. So everybody is impacted, but you solve it together. And there's a certain accountability and responsibility that you give to everyone. So there's control, but it doesn't come from one person. You give control and a certain level of accountability in your team. Understood.
Well, that should be the nice, let's say, way to go and to do things. Hopefully, I mean, I know because at some point in the companies, at least nowadays, I hear that it's not always the case. Probably you've seen also from your experience. But I think you should promote more often this Anton Cord example in your workshops, because I think it would be really, really interesting to hear for other people also to understand.
Yeah, for instance, if we are doing a project, you work together with a bunch of people, and as in a production line, everybody is focused on some aspect of the project. If someone sees something happen and it has a lot to do with safety and doesn't speak up, then that error or issue might pop up in a later phase with a potential bigger impact.
and we don't want that. Nobody
and
wants that.
that's something, of course, that you absolutely don't want.
Yeah.
And that's why control cannot be at one point, but you have to make sure that everybody is accountable and is allowed to take control in a certain
And they
point.
know what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
So everybody knows exactly what their role is within the small, let's say, team.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. And then, going back to our lovely myths, there was another thing that I kept hearing about, and that is how people perceive leaders nowadays. You know, because every person in a company has their own, let's say, special image about how their leaders are supposed to be like. And sometimes I understand that we often see leaders as these extroverted people, very charismatic, who are supposed to know to take the whole energy in the room. Are they like that?
I think you certainly have them,
Okay.
but I think if you look again to, let's say, a perfect leader, which is, as I say, I strongly promote collaborative leadership,
Okay.
meaning that then you're looking at, let's say, a servant leader. If you're the only and the loudest voice in the room,
Yeah.
then you miss a bit the other voices in the room, because it's a given that many other voices spark innovations, spark new ideas,
Yeah.
and that's what you want. So sometimes as a leader, you can be, of course, extroverted, whatever, at a company party or whatever, or an event, or as a keynote speaker. But in reality, in the day-to-day business, I think it's equally important that once in a while you just step back, you ask questions, you listen to others, because in my experience and shared opinion, of course, is that the best leaders are those that are really good listeners and ask the right questions.
Indeed, that's very true. And where do you think this ideal image of the ideal leader comes from? Why do people expect only one particular type of leader as the ideal one? You know, always this extroverted, charismatic.
I think everybody loves a hero.
Aww.
I think that's a bit that thing. So
Yeah.
you see, for instance, the Steve Jobs
Okay.
kind of characters coming on stage and silencing the room they're in, and that is something, of course, they draw our attention, and that's
Sure.
sometimes the image we have. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, whatever, all the big ones.
Yeah.
Regardless personal opinions about certain people,
I try.
but these people manage. For instance, Bill Gates, a few decades ago, he was also going on stage promoting his products.
Yeah, true. Indeed, I remember that. Imagine that, you know, Bezos and of course all of the, let's say,
Steve Jobs
and so on, they have this particular, let's say, charm when they talk.
Charisma. Voilà.
Exactly. And this is what you mean, no? By having this hero, and this is why we think that the ideal leader should be
Exactly.
like this.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that you have also very good leaders, even if they're more quiet and they're more behind the scenes and not exactly, you know,
they perform and act very well in the shadows.
Exactly. And I think that's a super top skill, huh? For no?
Yeah, of course, because again, that's a bit part of being a servant leader. You don't have to don't have to be the loudest voice all the time in the room.
Yeah.
But make sure that you give the floor to everyone.
Okay. And if you do this, basically you can attract this trust and performance from the team, or.
Of course, this ignites trust, because you get a room of a floor of safety.
Yeah.
So it's a safe environment where everybody can act, react, and move along in the company.
Yeah, that's true. And that's a very good point, actually. Okay, thank you for sharing that. That's very, very useful. And another myth that I keep hearing about is that leaders are not supposed to show weakness. Is that true or false?
Again, I don't agree with this myth.
Okay.
Because I think if a leader wears the mask of perfection, then the company is only performing, not growing. Because everybody is following what is the norm. if as a leader you set the norm, then you stop again evolution, innovation, and make the company grow.
That's very true. And why do you think, I mean, because for sure this type of myth is coming from somewhere. So people who are in these high positions sometimes feel afraid to show weakness in this, I mean, to show vulnerability. Why do you think they are afraid?
Simply because they think they will be punished by making mistakes. While I've read some nice articles, and one example in particular is about a hospital where the best performing team was actually the team that I would not say made the most mistakes, but every little mistake that was made, they reported it. So they put all the mistakes and issues and errors on paper, and that made that they were learning from it. Because if you create an environment of perfection, then you stop learning. Because if you give the safety and trust to make mistakes, then you give also the floor to learn and to grow.
So from your, let's say, perspective, would it make sense and would it be okay, for example, for a leader to come and say, look, I have no idea how we will solve this today. I need to figure out, or I don't know, I'm not okay today to say, let's, kick it, or I just feel that I need help. That person needs to ask help from the team. How do you think this would that be okay?
Well, of course, I think if you show a little bit of humanity and that you show that you're just another person like anyone else, and you ask help, then also that I think nowadays, and not only in companies, in general, people are too afraid to ask for help. And asking for help is something very courageous. And the moment you ask help, then you put something on the table that is not solved. And by doing that, you give an opportunity to solve something and to move forward. I think that is very important.
That's amazing, because that will help also the team step in, and have that type of, as you were saying, that contribution at some point, getting into the game and trying to support. So that will not be seen, normally, it should not be seen as a weakness.
No, absolutely not. I think it's creating opportunities. And I know it might sound a bit weird in some cultures, but allowing mistakes is actually really, and look, also as a leader, if you say, okay, I fucked up, this is a mistake I made, if you're open and honest about it, but you also say, this is how I cope with it, these are the actions I'm going to tie to this, then you create, let's say, and you do it consistently, then you also create a certain trust. Because people say, okay, he knows what he's talking about, okay, there was a mistake, he admitted, he is open, he looked for several solutions, he reached out to others, so he did not stay in his own puddle of problems, he stepped out of it and made sure that things started working again.
Okay, and that also, as you said before, encourages the sense of accountability for the team as well, no? If they have the example.
Yeah, because that is accountability.
Exactly. Okay, that's amazing. So, well, it is a very interesting way, on how, the dynamics between being a good leader and how you basically show up to your team and how the team then takes, takes you as not necessarily the model, but even if you make mistakes, or even if you say, okay, I made a mistake, or I don't know exactly everything, that should be definitely an idea, let's say an example for them to do the same, and also to step up when they have to, and to take accountability for their own, let's say, things that they need to work on more.
It's not about promoting making mistakes, but it's promoting about if something happened, that you don't hide it, and that you put it in the open, and you take the opportunity to solve it and to learn from it.
And that also improves the company culture, because everyone contributes to the company culture.
Exactly, because that's what you want, that everybody collaborates.
Exactly, as you said before. So we're going back to the same point that we started.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything is connected.
Yeah.
So indeed, this is a very interesting topic, and thank you so much for sharing all of these insights, because it's a little bit confusing for some, and we have so many people who are maybe just becoming managers or leaders, and they don't know where to start from, or how to act, or what exactly means to be a leader or a manager. So for them in particular, what would be maybe the thing that you would advise them to stick to, or let's say the top thing that they should focus on when they start in a position like this?
Suppose you're not in a culture or in an environment that promotes collaborative leadership, that is, for instance, very hierarchical, that is built on certainty, not innovation, and you say, okay, this is not where the company should be moving in, then you can also start with your team. You can start from your own little team, and if you promote that, sometimes that can spark to other teams as well.
Okay, so they should start focusing from basically obviously from their small team. And for example, let's say you start promoting this type of collaborative leadership in your team, because that's the starting point.
Yeah.
But then the company culture does not encourage it. How do you go from there, especially since you are new in the role?
You have two choices. Either what you try to do is you always have to stay true to yourself. Your leadership style should just be sparked as you are, and you just need to continue. If for some reason it completely does not work in the current company culture, then the only other option is then you maybe should find a culture or an environment that embraces that.
Or maybe you can push it and change it.
You can always try to push it and change it, of course. But as said, if you see that is not, if it's a company culture that is not promoting that, and you can start small. Or if you are at the top of the leadership, then you can push that. Let's say in a friendly way, but you can push that down. You have to lead by example. There are different possibilities. This is, of course, always in an ideal world. You will always have, let's say, failures and successes. But if you stick to the principle, I think you still go a long way further than before.
And I have one last question for you. Can everyone be considered a leader, or is it just for the top management?
It's everybody. If you're leading a group or if you're part of a group, doesn't matter. Any type of culture starts at least with someone.
Okay.
And that infects or affects and impacts all the others.
That's nice. Okay, so I mean, I like the way let's say the visual that I imagine. That it's contagious.
Contagious, exactly.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today with us. It's always useful to hear about this. You've watched another episode of HR Shake, a podcast where we bring people and myths into the mix. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget that we can all be leaders. It doesn't matter if we are, let's say, employees or managers. As long as we are part of a group and we're trying to contribute to it, we are all leaders, and we are leading by example. So if you liked this episode, feel free to watch it on Spotify and also on YouTube.
Thank you.